On January 1st, 1885, at Grosvenor House, the clock strikes 8 p.m. as Prime Minister William Gladstone raises his glass for a toast. At that very moment, a heavy tray of coal accidentally falls out of a secret door hidden in the wall, shattering the aristocratic silence with a crash. Hannah Kalvik, an emaciated dishwasher whose hands are black with soot and whose face is contorted with horror at the sight of the political elite, falls onto the carpet. Two completely different worlds, which were never meant to intersect in Victorian reality, freeze, staring into each other's eyes. I discovered this striking contrast by chance while studying the diaries of London domestic servants and the archives of England's oldest aristocratic families. What lies behind the beautiful facade of 19th century historical balls is striking in its ruthless pragmatism and precision. Life in a Victorian mansion was a strict chronological machine where any mistake cost a person their future. We've grown accustomed to admiring the lavish diplomatic receptions, forgetting the people who turned the cogs of this gigantic mechanism. Today, you'll have a unique opportunity to look behind the facades of high society and uncover the hidden truth. You'll learn the secret of London's domestic staff's invisibility and understand the true cost of high society's impeccable comfort. This in-depth analysis will reveal not just dry facts, but the real lives of specific historical figures. You'll understand how the Prime Minister's political decisions affected the daily life of an ordinary dishwasher. We'll also show how the servants' grueling physical labor ensured the political triumph of statesmen. Each successive hour of this historical investigation will reveal increasingly astonishing details of Victorian daily life. Watch the video to the end, and you'll find out how the unexpected encounter between Prime Minister William Gladstone and a simple dishwasher named Hannah ended. At 4 a.m. on January 1st, 1885, Grosvenor House is shrouded in total darkness and piercing winter cold. In a small room under the very roof, dishwasher Hannah Kalvik wakes up. Her life is entirely governed by a strict schedule. She is not allowed to sleep in, for the warmth of the entire vast house depends on her waking up. Her day begins long before the first rays of sunlight touch the spires of London's churches. This early rise sets in motion the invisible cogs of a massive machine that ensures the comfort of the aristocratic family. The conditions in the junior servants' quarters lack even a hint of the Victorian coziness so cherished by the masters. There is no fireplace in the room, and the water in the wash basin is often covered with a thin crust of ice. Hannah quickly slips on a stiff cotton dress and a thick apron, which will be her only protection against dirt for the entire day. Her movements are practiced to the point of second nature, as any delay could result in a fine or even dismissal. She descends the narrow black staircase, taking care not to wake the senior servants, whose wake-up time is later. Every step of this staircase creaks, a reminder of the strict hierarchy that permeates every inch of this mansion. The descent takes several minutes, winding through a labyrinthine system of service corridors. The house's architecture is designed so that the servants can move about unnoticed by the residents of the formal rooms. Hannah descends into the enormous kitchen, where an icy gloom reigns, permeated by the smells of last night's dinner. Her first and most important task is to light the gigantic kitchen stove, which requires constant attention. The girl shovels out the heavy ash, smearing her hands and face with acrid black dust. Then she adds fresh coal, fanning the first sparks of flame that will bring warmth to this subterranean world. According to Isabella Beeton's famous book on housekeeping, a dishwasher's morning should be devoted to the dirtiest work. Hannah takes a stiff brush and a special graphite paste to scrub the metal parts of the stove until they shine perfectly. This process requires immense physical effort, wearing the skin on her hands down until deep cracks form. In these early hours, the kitchen belongs only to her, creating a strange sense of solitude. Huge copper pots hang from the ceiling, reflecting the dancing tongues of flame. Hannah puts huge kettles of water onto boil, water that the cooks and maids will need in a few hours. She knows every crack in the stone floor and every dent in the kitchen table by heart. There is a meditative rhythm to this grueling routine that allows her to forget about social inequality for a while. The young woman takes a peculiar pride in the fact that it is her unseen labor that brings this enormous house to life. By 5 a.m., other members of the junior staff begin to come down to the kitchen. The kitchen maids arrive and immediately set to work, preparing vegetables and meat for the upcoming breakfast. The silence gives way to the clatter of knives, the clinking of dishes, and the quiet whispers of the young women. Conversations are kept in hushed tones, as loud laughter or noise are strictly forbidden by the house rules. Hannah helps carry heavy buckets of coal for the fireplaces in the first-floor reception rooms. This grueling logistical task requires the phenomenal stamina possessed by Victorian working-class women. The economic reality of Hannah's life leaves her no choice but to cling to this job with all her might. Her wages are a pittance, a portion of which she is required to set aside for unforeseen needs. Being fired from Grosvenor House without a good reference would mean certain death by starvation on the streets of London. That is precisely why she endures the cold, humiliation, and back-breaking labour, finding solace in stability. The British Empire built its wealth not only on its colonies, but also on the cheap labour of its own citizens. Hannah's fate was typical of hundreds of thousands of women whose names have been lost forever in the archives. By 6 a.m., the enormous kitchen transforms into a bustling hub of activity and hustle and bustle. Fresh baked goods begin to arrive, and the aromas of fried bacon and brewed tea fill the basement rooms. The sous chefs set to work, creating complex sauces that require hours of preparation. Hannah endlessly washes mountains of dirty dishes, using caustic soap that further chaps her skin. The water quickly becomes greasy and hot, turning the sink area into a stifling cloud of steam. In this chaos, everyone knows their role, working like a well-oiled clockwork mechanism. Outside, on the streets of London, dawn is breaking, revealing a misty January landscape. The city awakens to the clatter of hooves and the shouts of street vendors offering fresh milk and newspapers. Inside the mansion, the light comes in more slowly as the narrow basement windows let in little sunlight. Hannah pauses for a second to wipe the sweat from her forehead with the back of her blackened hand. She knows she still has 15 hours of non-stop work ahead of her before she can return to her cold bed. This brief pause gives her the strength to continue her endless battle with dirty dishes and coal. The first stage of the morning preparations is complete, and the foundation for a long day has been laid flawlessly. The mansion's black staircases begin to echo with the footsteps of maids carrying hot water to the upper floors. The Grosvenor House machine is up and running, and now it's time to wake up those for whom she works. The life of a dishwasher is hidden in the shadows, but without her efforts, all the aristocratic glamour would simply fade away. I'd love to hear your perspective. What do you think about such a harsh daily survival routine? Share your thoughts in the comments. What lies behind the massive oak doors of the master's bedrooms, once the servants have already worked half their shift? At 7 a.m., a completely different, warm and serene atmosphere reigns on the second floor of the mansion. Hugh Grosvenor, the first Duke of Westminster and one of the wealthiest men in England, slowly opens his eyes. In his spacious bedroom, the fireplace is already blazing, stoked by an unobtrusive maid an hour ago. Heavy velvet curtains reliably shield the Duke's peace from the London fog and street noise. This world is woven from silence, comfort, and absolute confidence in the future. The Duke's personal valet appears silently at his bedside, holding a silver tray with hot tea. The valet belongs to the elite of the household staff. His manners are impeccable, and his clothes are always perfectly pressed. He does not dare to speak first, waiting patiently for the master of the house to take notice of him. The morning ritual is scheduled down to the minute and has remained unchanged for years. The Duke drinks his tea while reading the fresh morning papers, which have been ironed beforehand to set the ink. Meanwhile, downstairs, in the icy water, the dishwasher Hannah continues to scrub greasy pots. Hugh Grosvenor's wealth is difficult to quantify. It was measured in entire blocks of London's most expensive district, Mayfair. His decisions influenced the architectural landscape of the capital, the nation's economy, and the political balance of power in Parliament. However, his immense fortune also brought with it a colossal responsibility to society and the Crown. The Duke was involved in dozens of charitable projects, funding hospitals, schools, and shelters for the poor. His day consisted of endless meetings, reviewing documents, and making strategic decisions. An aristocratic title required constant reaffirmation of status through an impeccable lifestyle. After morning tea, the complex process of dressing begins, which is impossible to complete without the help of a valet. A Victorian gentleman's attire consisted of numerous layers, each requiring a perfect fit. The valet helps the Duke put on a snow-white shirt, ties a complex knot in his tie, and hands him perfectly polished shoes. The choice of suit depends on the day's plans, whether it's a visit to Parliament or a meeting at a private club. This morning, the Duke chooses a formal frock coat as he prepares for important political negotiations in his home office. Every detail of his appearance must convey confidence, authority, and traditional values. After descending to the first floor, the Duke makes his way to the small dining room for his morning meal. The table is set with silverware, crystal, and the finest porcelain, glistening in the morning sunlight. The menu includes eggs, bacon, kidneys, several kinds of fish, fresh pastries, and jams. This abundance stands in stark contrast to the servants' modest breakfast of bread and weak tea. The footman, attending the table, watches the Duke's every move, instantly anticipating his wishes. The meal takes place in silence, broken only by the soft clink of cutlery against the precious porcelain. After breakfast, Hugh Grosvenor retires to his private study, panelled in dark mahogany. On his massive desk awaits a stack of sorted correspondence, delivered by the morning mail. His secretary has already prepared brief summaries of the most important letters, saving his high-ranking employer time. Among the papers are reports from estate managers, requests for financial support, and secret political reports. In early 1885, British politics were in a state of tension due to issues surrounding Irish self-government. The Duke must carefully review each document in order to make well-considered decisions. At this moment, we witness the emotional ups and downs of an aristocrat's life, hidden behind a facade of prosperity. Enormous power brings with it a constant sense of anxiety about the future of his estates and the entire empire. Hugh Grosvenor often feels weary from endless social obligations and the need to always keep up appearances. He finds brief solace gazing out the window at the well-tended inner garden, hidden from prying eyes. This moment of silence in his study becomes his only private time throughout the long day. Soon, the silence will be broken by the arrival of the first visitors and the start of diplomatic maneuvering. While the Duke is lost in thought, work continues to buzz below, ensuring this comfort. Servants meticulously clean the master's bedroom, change the water in the jugs, and remove the ashes from the fireplace. Maids move through the rooms like ghosts, trying to finish cleaning before the owner's return. Their task is to make the house appear to be a self-cleaning mechanism that requires no human intervention. Any trace left behind by cleaning equipment is considered a gross violation of the rules and is strictly punished. This is how the illusion of a perfect world is created, one in which dust and dirt disappear on their own. The first half of the morning reveals an unbridgeable chasm between the two worlds within a single mansion. While Hannah Calvick works her hands to the bone, the Duke of Westminster decides the fates of thousands of his tenants. Both are bound to this house by invisible threads of duty, tradition, and strict social norms. Their lives run parallel, governed by a single clock that can't stand the hours of the Victorian era. This order seems eternal and unshakable, much like the stone walls of the historic London mansion themselves. But to maintain this splendor, the house requires a constant influx of fresh supplies. What will happen when suppliers from all over London flood into this closed-off world, shattering the morning silence? At 10 a.m., The narrow alley behind Grosvenor House transforms into the neighbourhood's busiest commercial thoroughfare. Carts belonging to butchers, greengrocers, coal merchants, and ice vendors from all corners of the capital converge here. This service entrance is the only link between the sterile world of the aristocracy and the dirty, noisy London. It is here that the daily delivery of hundreds of kilograms of foodstuffs necessary to sustain the life of this massive house takes place. The delivery process resembles a well-organized military operation, complete with its own commanders and subordinates. The back entrance is ruled by the stern butler, Mr. Smith, whose authority on the lower floors is absolute. He personally inspects the quality of every carcass of meat delivered, every basket of oysters, and every sack of flour. Suppliers know that the slightest displeasure on Mr. Smith's part could cost them the most lucrative contract of their lives. The butler wears an impeccable black suit, which starkly distinguishes him from the ragged London peddlers. His word is law, and his approval opens the door to a steady income for many small merchants. This invisible diplomacy of the back entrance shaped an entire shadow economy in the Victorian capital. The renowned researcher Charles Booth, who mapped London's poverty, often described this striking contrast. Carts delivered delicacies from the poorest neighbourhoods of the East End straight to the wealthy districts of the West End. Deliverymen, whose families often went hungry, handed over select fruits and the freshest fish to well-fed servants. They dared not cross the threshold of the mansion, leaving the goods on the special stone steps of the service entrance. This physical separation served as a metaphor for Victorian society as a whole, where class boundaries were insurmountable. The goods crossed this invisible line, but the people who delivered them always remained outside. Once the goods were accepted, they were quickly distributed among the mansion's numerous pantries and cellars. Footmen in striped vests carried heavy crates of wine into the dark cellars, strictly maintaining the proper temperature. Junior kitchen staff hauled blocks of ice into special ice houses to keep the food fresh. Coal, essential for heating the house, is poured into deep hoppers with a loud, frightening rumble. Meanwhile, the dishwasher Hannah receives a new batch of work, scrubbing dirt off the dirty baskets and wooden crates. The household's logistical machine is running at full speed, preparing for the upcoming evening feast. At 10:30 in the morning, it's time for a brief respite for the inhabitants of the lower floors. The servants gather in the large servants' hall for morning tea, strictly observing the internal hierarchy. At the head of the long oak table sit the butler and the housekeeper, symbolizing supreme authority in this underground realm. Seated next to them are the valets and senior maids, enjoying the privilege of drinking the finest tea. The junior servants, including Hannah, huddle at the far end of the table, content with the leftovers from yesterday's pastries. Even during their break, the servants cannot forget their place on the complex social ladder. The technological progress of the era also leaves its mark on the logistics of a vast Victorian mansion. Rows of mechanical bells hang on the walls of the hallways, each connected by wire to a specific room. Alongside them, the first speaking tubes begin to appear, allowing orders to be given directly from the study to the kitchen. These innovations make control over the servants even more total, robbing them of their last moments of peace. As soon as a particular bell rings, the corresponding servant is required to drop everything and rush upstairs. The machine demands immediate obedience, turning people into living appendages of complex mechanisms. By noon, the morning chaos of deliveries gives way to methodical preparations for the afternoon's events. The pantries are filled to capacity, the menu has been approved, and the silver has been polished to a mirror-like shine. Mr. Smith conducts a final inspection of the footmen's ceremonial liveries, checking the cleanliness of their white gloves and the evenness of the seams. Hannah returns to her pots, preparing hot water to wash the countless plates after the servants' lunch. The calm before the storm hangs in the air as the afternoon promises to be incredibly hectic. The house holds its breath in anticipation of the first important guests, who will soon knock on the front doors. This hidden life behind the scenes reveals the true scale of the effort required to maintain their status. The impeccable order in the drawing rooms would be impossible without the daily chaos of deliveries and strict management downstairs. The servants, like invisible ants, kept this vast organism functioning, remaining completely unnoticed by their masters. The butler, Mr. Smith, masterfully conducted this orchestra, achieving a perfect harmony without a single false note. But even the most perfect mechanism can malfunction if the pressure becomes too high. Guess what happens when a man arrives at the house on whom the fate of the entire British Empire depends? By 2 p.m, Grosvenor House is transformed, opening its grand doors to members of high society. In Mayfair, the intricate ritual of exchanging calling cards begins, defining the social status of every family in London. Butlers in powdered wigs stand at the entrance, accepting the small, rectangular pieces of paper on silver trays. A card, left with a folded corner, could signify sincere friendship, while its absence meant complete social ostracism. This silent card game determined fates and reputations without a single word being spoken aloud. Today is a special day, as the Duke of Westminster is expecting a visit that goes beyond the bounds of ordinary social etiquette. Exactly at the appointed time, Prime Minister William Gladstone's modest but recognisable carriage pulls up at the main entrance. The elderly statesman slowly ascends the marble steps, leaning on his cane, his face expressing deep thoughtfulness. The visit is unofficial, but every servant in the house understands the historical significance of this event. The Duke personally greets Gladstone at the library door, a sign of the highest respect for his guest. The heavy oak doors close behind them, cutting the politicians off from the rest of the world. In early 1885, the British Empire was at a crossroads, facing both external and internal crises. General Gordon's army was besieged in Khartoum, Sudan, and the Irish question threatened to split Parliament. Gladstone needed the support of the country's most influential aristocrats to maintain the political balance within the government. The library at Grosvenor House became a secret centre of decision-making, where the fates of the colonies and legislation were discussed. The men sat in leather armchairs by the fireplace. Their leisurely conversation was interrupted only by the crackling of burning logs. The room was filled with an atmosphere of restrained strength, intellectual tension, and immense power over the world. At the very same time, just a few meters beneath the politicians' feet, a full-blown kitchen battle is unfolding. The mansion's head French chef begins preparations for the grand New Year's Eve dinner, scheduled for 8 p.m. The kitchen turns into a battlefield, where the chef issues orders in a mix of French and broken English. Dozens of assistants chop vegetables, carve game, and whip up intricate creams for multi-layered desserts. The heat from the scorching stoves becomes unbearable, forcing people to work at the limits of their physical endurance. The cost of a mistake here is just as high as that of a political blunder in the library upstairs. To maintain the proper temperature in the enormous ovens, a constant supply of fresh coal is required. This task falls on the frail shoulders of Hannah, the dishwasher, who tirelessly carries heavy buckets up from the basement. Her back aches from the constant strain, and sweat streams into her eyes, mixing with the ever-present coal dust. She must move quickly and quietly to avoid falling on the bad side of the enraged head chef. Every time she opens the cast-iron door of the firebox, Hannah is hit by a blast of scorching air right in the face. This grueling physical labor is the foundation upon which the French master's entire culinary art is built. Here, we again witness the sharp emotional swings characteristic of life in a Victorian mansion. Upstairs, Gladstone and the Duke elegantly discuss humanism and the fate of nations while sipping aged cognac. Downstairs, people are literally burning up at work, denied even a breath of fresh air. Yet amid the chaos of the kitchen, true masterpieces of culinary art are born, filling their creators with pride. The head chef personally garnishes the pheasant aspic, transforming an ordinary dish into a sculptural masterpiece of the era. This dedication to his craft gives meaning to the grueling labor of dozens of unseen kitchen workers. By 4 p.m, the political discussion in the library is drawing to a close. shaping new alliances in Parliament. Gladstone warmly bids farewell to the Duke, agreeing to stay for the evening's festive dinner with a select few. The news that the Prime Minister will stay for dinner spreads like wildfire through the house's service corridors. The butler, Mr. Smith, immediately makes adjustments to the seating arrangement and orders the finest silver to be brought out. Tension in the house rises exponentially as the evening promises to be incredibly critical. The slightest slip-up by the staff could ruin the mood of the man who rules an empire. Hannah, clearing away yet another mountain of dirty pots, overhears conversations about the important guest out of the corner of her ear. To her, the Prime Minister is just a mythical figure from the newspapers that the senior servants read in the evenings. Her world is confined to the walls of the kitchen, buckets of coal, and the endless battle against grease on the dishes. She doesn't understand political intrigue, but she's keenly aware of the growing tension around her. The young woman redoubles her efforts, trying to be as helpful as possible and avoid drawing unnecessary attention to herself. Her only goal is to get through this long day without getting reprimanded by her superiors. The sun outside the window begins to set rapidly, plunging London into a thick early twilight. The gas lamps on the streets light up one by one, piercing the thick January fog with their yellow glow. Inside the mansion, too, the ritual of lighting the lamps begins, symbolizing the transition from the hustle and bustle of the day to the evening's festivities. Grosvenor House is preparing for the climax of the first day of the new year, mustering all its internal resources. In the next chapter, you'll learn how the preparations for the evening unfolded and why this dinner became a turning point in the dishwasher's life. At 6 p.m., Grosvenor House is transformed into a resplendent palace, illuminated by the light of hundreds of wax candles and gas jets. Special servants in charge of the lighting move from room to room with long poles lighting the wicks. The mansion fills with a soft golden glow that reflects off the enormous mirrors and crystal chandeliers. This artificial lighting conceals any imperfections in the interior, creating an atmosphere of absolute fairy tale luxury. The house seems to don its finest mask as it prepares to welcome the cream of British society. On the second floor, the hosts begin the highly complex process of getting dressed for the evening, a task that demands incredible precision from the servants. Hugh Grosvenor, the first Duke of Westminster, leisurely slips into a formal evening tailcoat made of the finest English wool. His personal valet fastens the buttons on the snow-white, starched wing collar with surgical precision. In the adjoining rooms, the ladies of the house undergo an equally meticulous ritual of preparation for dinner. Maids help them slip into heavy silk gowns, lavishly adorned with intricate handmade lace. Massive family heirlooms, worth more than the annual budget of a small town, sparkle around the women's necks and wrists. This appearance is not merely a tribute to fleeting fashion, but a strict social code of British high society. The process of dressing takes over an hour, transforming people into living symbols of political status and boundless wealth. The family's readiness to appear in public signifies full compliance with the strict rules of aristocratic etiquette. In the grand dining room, a truly spectacular spectacle unfolds as the massive oak table is set. The butler, Mr. Smith, personally oversees the process, using a special wooden ruler to check the footmen's work. He methodically measures the distance between the plates, crystal glasses, and cutlery down to the millimeter. Perfectly straight rows of heavy silver forks and knives are gradually arranged on the snow-white, starched tablecloth. Huge gilded candlesticks take their places, ready to bathe the space in soft, warm light. Before our very eyes, the dining room transforms into a veritable temple of symmetry, order, and visual perfection. In the center of the banquet table stand intricate floral arrangements made from rare greenhouse plants. These living decorations were carefully crafted by the estate's head gardeners, specifically for this evening. Every detail of the interior and table setting is designed to subtly emphasize the incredible grandeur and power of the hosts. The footmen give the glasses one final wipe with thin napkins, removing invisible traces of dust. Not a single crooked spoon must offend the discerning eye of Prime Minister William Gladstone. The impeccability of the setting serves as a unique diplomatic tool, putting the high-ranking guests in the right frame of mind. Meanwhile, deep underground in the kitchen, the temperature and stress levels are reaching a critical point. The head French chef issues his final, terse orders before the large-scale serving of the first courses begins. His voice regularly breaks into a shout due to the immense pressure and responsibility for the event's success. Heavy, hot baking sheets bearing the evening's culinary masterpieces are hurriedly removed from the scorching ovens. The space is instantly filled with the rich aromas of roasted meat, fresh truffles, and complex wine sauces. In this strictly controlled chaos, there isn't a single second for hesitation or rest. Junior kitchen maids scurry ceaselessly between the enormous work tables. They carefully transfer the prepared food onto massive, preheated silver platters engraved with the Duke's coat of arms. The logistics of serving each dish through the long, labyrinthine basement corridors are calculated down to the second. The food must reach the aristocrat's table piping hot, despite the great distance from the kitchen stoves. The footmen line up in a neat chain, preparing to receive the trays and begin the ceremonial procession upstairs. The synchronized movements of the servants resemble the workings of a flawlessly tuned clockwork mechanism. At this very moment, the dishwasher Hannah is on the verge of complete exhaustion. Behind her lie 14 long hours of continuous and extremely dirty manual labor. Her thick work apron is soaked through with dirty soapy water and congealed grease from the frying pans. The young woman's hands have turned red from constant contact with hot steam and heavy cast iron cookware. Every movement comes with great difficulty due to the immense strain on her back and shoulder muscles. In the stifling atmosphere of the underground rooms, it becomes increasingly difficult for her to take each new breath. Despite her extreme exhaustion, Hannah must continue to ensure the smooth operation of the massive kitchen stoves. Her main task is to maintain maximum heat until the last hot dish is served. She methodically feeds new portions of heavy coal into the insatiable fireboxes of the cast iron stoves. But even in this endless cycle of exhaustion, there is suddenly room for contemplating beauty. Hannah accidentally casts a weary glance at the long table where the finished desserts are displayed. Huge sugar castles, candied exotic fruits, and the most delicate cream designs captivate the imagination. These culinary masterpieces look like a true miracle, straight out of the pages of fairy tales. The contrast between the black coal dust on the girl's hands and the snow-white sugar is incredibly stark. The waiters are already preparing to carefully lift these works of art to carry them to the influential guests. The girl freezes for a few seconds in the middle of the aisle, realizing the hidden irony of what is happening. She suddenly understands that it is precisely her grueling work in the dirt that made the creation of this splendor possible. Without the ovens she has stoked, the French chef would never have been able to create his intricate desserts. This strange, unexpected sense of connection to great artistry gives Hannah new strength. She grips the wooden handle of the heavy bucket of coal more tightly, suppressing her accumulated fatigue. The dishwasher turns around and strides confidently back into the dark corridor for another batch of fuel. Around 7:30 in the evening, luxurious carriages begin to pull up to the mansion's main entrance. On the frosty London street, the steady clatter of hooves on the swept cobblestones can be heard clearly. The creaking of heavy springs and the soft rustle of wheels herald the arrival of the empire's most important figures. From the carriages that have come to a stop, the quiet, confident voices of British aristocrats arriving for the celebration can be heard. The entrance area of the house is instantly filled with movement, the light of street lamps and the gentle bustle of servants greeting their guests. For a brief moment, the cold outer world of the capital comes into contact with the enclosed space of the luxurious mansion. Butlers dressed in formal livery swing open the massive entrance doors in unison. Distinguished ladies in expensive furs and gentlemen in tall top hats make a majestic entrance into the warm, brightly lit hall. The arrival of the first invited guests signals that the social machinery of Grosvenor House has reached full speed. There is no turning back, and every participant in this evening must play their role flawlessly. The lobby fills with a sense of expensive perfumes, quiet laughter, and the rustle of heavy fabrics. The air is literally thick with anticipation of a glittering social gathering, refined conversations, and impending political triumphs. Gladstone knows full well the true weight of every word spoken within the walls of this mansion. He draws on his vast experience to assess the risks and devise a complex negotiation strategy. The politician is absolutely certain that the organisational aspects of the evening will proceed without the slightest hitch. The Duke's residence is renowned throughout London for its unparalleled level of comfort and service. No trivial household matter or mistake by the staff should distract this statesman from his grand designs. The fate of the empire will be decided in an atmosphere of complete tranquility, ensured by the unseen efforts of dozens of people. However, fate has an unexpected twist in store, one that no schedule could possibly anticipate. While the guests are enjoying their aperitifs, a minor hiccup occurs downstairs with the delivery of coal to the fireplace in the adjacent room. The butler demands that the supply be replenished immediately so that the guests do not feel even the slightest draught. The task is assigned to Hannah, who must carry the coal through a secret corridor running parallel to the grand halls. The young woman grabs a heavy copper tray laden with select coal and runs down the dark, narrow passageway. Fatigue slows her reactions, and the weight of the load causes her to stumble. What happens in the next minute will forever shatter the illusion of the servant's invisibility. The clock strikes 8 p.m, heralding the start of the festive New Year's Eve dinner at Grosvenor House. In the grand drawing room, the guests line up in pairs, preparing to make a ceremonial procession into the dining room, aglow with lights. Prime Minister William Gladstone stands in the centre of the room, holding a glass of golden champagne. He delivers an elegant toast in honour of the British Empire, Queen Victoria, and a hospitable host. Everyone present falls silent in reverence, hanging on every word of the great statesman. At that very moment, in the dark service corridor behind the wall, something irreparable happens. Hannah, an exhausted dishwasher carrying a heavy tray of coal, stumbles over an uneven spot on the stone floor. Her legs, weary after 16 hours of non-stop running up and down the stairs, refuse to keep her balanced. She falls forward, her whole body crashing into a small door, concealed in the wall that leads directly into the grand reception room. The flimsy lock cannot withstand the impact, and the hidden door swings wide open with a loud crash. The tray slips from her hands, and chunks of black coal clatter across the priceless Persian rug. The scene that unfolds before the guests' eyes resembles a theatrical production frozen at its climax. On the floor lies a dirty woman, smeared with soot, breathing heavily from pain and terror. Towering over her are elegant gentlemen in tailcoats and ladies in diamonds, frozen in shock. Gladstone freezes with his glass raised. His piercing gaze meets the tear-filled eyes of the dishwasher. Two completely different worlds, which had existed in parallel, collide with a crash. This single second feels like an eternity, laying bare the fragility of Victorian society's social barriers. For Hannah, this moment becomes the peak of emotional turmoil and terror. She has broken the cardinal rule of invisibility by intruding into her employer's sacred space at the most inopportune moment. The young woman curls up on the floor, expecting immediate punishment, screams, or even a call to the police. She sees the Prime Minister's gleaming shoes just a few inches from her smudged face. The thought of immediate dismissal, starvation, and losing her home flashes through her mind. All her hard work is devalued by a single accidental slip-up caused by simple physical exhaustion. However, the public's reaction turns out to be completely different from what the terrified dishwasher had expected. Gladstone, known for his humanitarian views, takes a step back and slowly lowers his glass. He utters not a word of reproach, but merely looks sadly at the spilled coal and the trembling woman. The Duke of Westminster gives a slight wave of his hand to signal the waiting footmen to remedy the situation. None of the guests dares to laugh or voice their disgust, maintaining an icy, aristocratic composure. The incident is ignored with masterful grace, as if it were merely a fleeting hallucination. The footmen instantly take Hannah by the arms and drag her back into the safety of the corridor's darkness. The door slams shut, cutting off the world of light and champagne from the world of soot and tears. Downstairs, Hannah sits on an upside-down crate, trying to stop her hands from shaking. The butler, Mr. Smith, doesn't yell at her, realizing that the girl has simply been pushed to her limits by an overwhelming workload. She is allowed to drink a mug of hot tea and is ordered to return to washing the dishes. At that moment, the heroine undergoes an inner transformation, the culmination of this long day. Her fear fades, replaced by a strange, calm understanding of her true role within this vast machinery. She is not merely a slave to the schedule. She is the very force without which their world would freeze and come to a standstill. Hannah returns to her cauldrons with a new, quiet dignity in every movement. She washes the soot from her face, rolls up her sleeves, and plunges her hands back into the hot water. She is no longer ashamed of her dirt because she has seen weakness and confusion in the eyes of the powerful. The Prime Minister may rule an empire, but he cannot light a fire to warm his hands. This thought warms her soul better than any fire in the cold kitchen of Grosvenor House. Her day's work is done. She has survived, kept her job, and found inner strength. The clock is counting down the final hours of the first day of 1885, plunging London into a cold winter night. Upstairs in the dining room, long speeches are being delivered, crystal glasses are clinking, and historic destinies are being decided. Downstairs, brushes scrape methodically, plates are washed, and red-hot stoves die down. Two parallel worlds have once again gone their separate ways, never to intersect again, but the memory of those few seconds of silence will remain forever within the walls of this old London mansion. The story of this day has revealed to us the true face of the Victorian era, hidden behind the facades of luxurious mansions. We have traced the path from that freezing morning in the cramped room of a dishwasher to the Prime Minister's gleaming drawing room. The chance encounter between Hannah and William Gladstone became a metaphor for the entire 19th century, where colossal wealth was built upon invisible, back-breaking labor. The heroine endured fear and exhaustion, eventually coming to realize her own significance within a ruthless social machine. This house could not have survived a single day without thousands of nameless workers just like her. How do you view such a rigid system of social division that existed in Victorian England? In the comments, suggest topics for future videos related to the daily life and mysteries of other historical eras that you'd like to see on our channel. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss new in-depth explorations of the living history of humanity.